#Alien Beasts thought the tundra was easy. Cold Division had other plans. The frozen winds of Kepler 442c howled across the endless white expanse, carrying with them the bitter taste of defeat. Commander Sarah Chun pressed her face closer to the observation scope, watching the alien war machines lumber across the tundra like mechanical titans. Each step of the Vorthack invasion force left deep craters in the permafrost, their heat shields glowing orange against the perpetual twilight of the ice world. "Ma'am, long-range sensors are picking up their main column," reported Lieutenant Hayes, his breath forming small clouds in the sub-zero air of the command bunker. Estimated 40,000 hostiles, moving in formation toward New Geneva. Sarah pulled back from the scope and rubbed her tired eyes. 3 months ago, the human colony of New Geneva had been a thriving research outpost, home to 15,000 scientists, engineers, and their families. Now it was humanity's last stronghold on this frozen rock, defended by the 7th Arctic Division, better known as the Cold Division. The Vorthack had made a critical error in their galactic conquest strategy. They had assumed that ice worlds were easy targets, believing that any species capable of surviving in such harsh conditions would be weak and desperate. They thought wrong. Sarah's division consisted of soldiers handpicked from Earth's most brutal environments. Siberian special forces who could survive naked in negative 50-degree weather. Canadian rangers who tracked prey across thousands of miles of wilderness. Norwegian mountain troops who made their homes in conditions that would kill most humans within hours. These weren't desperate colonists. They were apex predators shaped by the cruelest teacher in the universe, Mother Nature herself. "Status report on the perimeter defenses," Sarah ordered, turning to face her assembled officers. The command bunker had been carved directly into a glacier, its walls lined with ice that never melted despite the heat from their equipment. Icicles hung from the ceiling like natural chandeliers, and every surface was covered with a thin layer of frost that reformed as quickly as it was brushed away. Captain Rodriguez, the division's chief engineer, stepped forward with a tablet displaying thermal readouts. "All ice barriers are holding at maximum thickness. We've got a network of tunnels connecting every major defensive position, and the automated heating systems are keeping them just warm enough to prevent collapse while maintaining concealment from their thermal scanners." The genius of the Cold Division's defensive strategy lay in understanding their environment better than any alien species possibly could. While the Vorthack relied on their advanced technology to protect them from a cold, the human defenders had learned to make the ice their ally. Their weapons were designed to function in extreme cold. Their armor provided heating while maintaining mobility, and their tactics took advantage of weather patterns that the aliens couldn't predict. "What about ammunition supplies?" Sarah asked. Sergeant Major Kim, a grizzled veteran whose face bore the permanent marks of frostbite from a dozen campaigns, consulted his inventory logs. "We're running low on conventional rounds, but the ice ammunition production is exceeding expectations. The frozen projectiles are actually more effective against Vorthack armor than we anticipated. Their heat shields can't compensate for the thermal shock." Sarah nodded with grim satisfaction. The ice ammunition had been her idea, born from watching icicles shatter concrete during a winter storm on Earth. If you could freeze water to the exact right temperature and fire it at hypersonic speeds, it would penetrate armor and then explosively boil into steam inside the target. The Vorthack's own heat-based defensive systems worked against them, turning each ice bullet into a miniature steam explosion. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Hayes called out, monitoring the communications array. "We're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. They're demanding our surrender." "Put it through," Sarah ordered, pulling on her thermal gloves and stepping toward the main communications console. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the grotesque form of a Vorthack commander. The alien resembled a cross between a rhinoceros and a spider with thick armored hide and multiple limbs that ended in razor-sharp claws. Its face was dominated by 4 glowing eyes and a mouth filled with teeth designed for tearing flesh. "Human defenders." The alien spoke through a translation device, its voice carrying the arrogance of a species that had conquered 17 worlds without significant resistance. "I am War Commander Zexthal of the Vorthack hegemony. Your pathetic ice ball offers nothing worth the ammunition we waste destroying you. Surrender now, and we will grant you the honor of serving as labor slaves rather than simply consuming you." Sarah stepped into the hologram's field of view, her breath visible in the frigid air. She wore the standard cold division uniform, white and gray camouflage designed to blend with ice and snow, heated inner layers that regulated body temperature, and armor plating that could stop a Vorthack claw strike. On her shoulder was the division's patch, a wolf's head surrounded by icicles. "War Commander," she replied, her voice steady despite the sub-zero temperature. "I'm Commander Chun of the 7th Arctic Division. We've reviewed your terms, and I'm afraid we'll have to decline. You see, you made one critical mistake in your intelligence gathering." The alien commander's eyes narrowed, clearly not expecting defiance from what he considered a primitive species trapped on a frozen wasteland. "Explain yourself, human. What mistake could our superior technology possibly have made?" Sarah smiled, expression that somehow managed to be warm despite the ice crystals forming on her lips. "You assumed that because this world is cold, we must be weak. That because it's harsh, we must be desperate. You've conquered 17 worlds, but I'm guessing none of them were ice worlds. None of them had defenders who were actually born for this environment." She gestured toward the scope that showed his advancing forces. "Your heat shields are bright beacons in our thermal scopes. Your heavy armor makes you slow on ice. Your fusion reactors create warm spots we can track from orbit. You're not invading our world, War Commander. You're walking into our freezer." The alien's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter or anger. Brave words from a species that requires artificial heating to survive. "We will crush your defenses within a solar day and feast on your frozen corpses." "You're welcome to try," Sarah replied. "But I should mention, we've been preparing for this fight for 3 months. We know this ice like you know the inside of your own ship. And, unlike you, we don't need heat shields to survive here." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the command bunker in silence, except for the constant whisper of wind through the ice walls. Captain Rodriguez looked at the thermal display showing the approaching alien army. "Ma'am, with respect, they do outnumber us 20 to 1, and their individual units are twice the size of our soldiers." Sarah picked up her rifle, a specially modified weapon designed for Arctic warfare. The barrel was insulated to prevent freezing. The firing mechanism used a chemical reaction that worked better in cold temperatures, and the scope was calibrated for the unique light conditions of the ice world. "Rodriguez, have you ever hunted wolves in winter?" she asked. "No, ma'am. Wolves don't win by being bigger or stronger than their prey. They win by being smarter, by working together, and by understanding their territory better than anything else that lives there." She shouldered the rifle and headed toward the bunker's exit. The Vorthack are about to learn what happens when you hunt wolves on their home ground. Outside the bunker, the rest of the Cold Division was preparing for battle. Soldiers emerged from hidden positions in the ice like ghosts, their white camouflage making them nearly invisible against the snow. They moved with the fluid grace of people who had spent years learning to navigate treacherous ice, setting up firing positions, and checking equipment with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Private Jackson, barely 19, but already a veteran of 2 ice world conflicts, approached Sarah with a question. "Commander, the new guys are asking about the plan. Some of them are worried about the odds." Sarah looked across the frozen battlefield, where her soldiers were disappearing into positions that the aliens would never see coming. In the distance, the Vorthack war machines continued their advance, confident in their superior numbers and technology. "Tell them this, Jackson," she said, watching a squad of her best marksmen vanish into a network of ice caves that honeycombed the glacier. "Every alien army that's ever invaded an ice world has made the same mistake. They think cold means weak. They think ice means brittle. They think winter means death." She pointed toward a series of seemingly random ice formations that concealed artillery positions, supply caches, and tunnel entrances. "But we know the truth. Winter doesn't mean death. Winter means patience. It means using every advantage your environment gives you. It means making your enemy fight on your terms, not theirs." The wind picked up, carrying with it the sound of alien machinery grinding across the ice. In 12 hours, the Vorthack would reach the outer perimeter of New Geneva's defenses. They expected to find desperate humans huddled around heating units, easy prey for their superior technology and overwhelming numbers. Instead, they would find the Cold Division waiting for them in positions that had been planned and prepared for months. They would find soldiers who moved through blizzards like other people walked through clear weather, who could set up ambushes in ice storms, and who had turned every square meter of their frozen territory into a carefully planned killing field. "Get word to all units," Sarah ordered as the first snowflakes of the evening storm began to fall. "Phase 1 begins at dawn. Remind everyone, we're not just defending a colony. We're teaching the galaxy that humans don't just survive in the cold. We thrive in it." As night fell across the tundra, the temperature dropped to levels that would kill most sentient species within minutes. But throughout the glacier, human soldiers settled into positions that had been designed to take advantage of every aspect of their brutal environment. They checked their weapons, tested their communication systems, and prepared to show an arrogant alien army what happened when apex predators were cornered in their natural habitat. The Vorthack had come expecting easy prey. Tomorrow, they would discover that they had walked into a trap 3 months in the making, set by the deadliest predators the galaxy had ever produced. Humans who had learned to call winter home. #The hunt begins. Dawn arrived without warning on Kepler 442c, as it always did during the planet's winter season. One moment the landscape was shrouded in the absolute darkness of polar night, and the next it was bathed in the pale gray light of a sun that barely crested the horizon. For the Vorthack invasion force, this sudden transition from dark to light was disorienting. For the soldiers of the Cold Division, it was simply Tuesday. Commander Sarah Chun lay motionless in her sniper nest, carved directly into the face of a glacier overlooking the main approach to New Geneva. She had been in position for 6 hours, her body temperature regulated by the heating elements woven into her armor, her breathing controlled to prevent the formation of telltale vapor clouds. Through her scope, she watched the alien army spread across the tundra like a dark stain on white canvas. The Vorthack had organized their forces exactly as predicted. Heavy assault units formed the front line, their massive frames carried by repulsor technology that kept them hovering 3 feet above the ice. Behind them came the main infantry, thousands of soldiers in power armor that gleamed with heat dispersal systems. Artillery units brought up the rear, their weapons platforms so large they required dedicated hover barges to transport them across the frozen terrain. "All units, this is actual," Sarah whispered into her communicator, using the division's code for the commanding officer. "Enemy is approaching checkpoint Alpha. Remember your training and trust your equipment. Winter wolves don't charge, they stalk." 3 miles away, Sergeant First Class Maria Santos adjusted her position in the ice tunnel that would serve as her unit's primary firing position. The tunnel was part of a network that the Cold Division had been excavating for months, using specialized drilling equipment that created passages barely wide enough for a human, but completely invisible to orbital sensors. The walls were lined with a polymer that prevented melting while maintaining structural integrity, and the floors were textured to provide traction even when covered with ice. "Rodriguez, you copy the commander's transmission?" Santos asked her second-in-command, Corporal David Rodriguez. "Copy, Sergeant. Teams 1 through 4 are in position. The ice spikes are primed and ready for detonation." The ice spikes were one of the Cold Division's most devastating innovations. Using a combination of controlled explosions and the natural geological features of the glacier, they had prepared dozens of locations where they could cause massive ice formations to collapse on command. Each spike was a towering pillar of ice weighing several tons, positioned above the routes that enemy forces would be forced to take due to the terrain. Santos checked her weapon one final time. Like all Cold Division firearms, it had been extensively modified for Arctic conditions. The barrel was lined with a coating that prevented ice buildup. The firing mechanism used a chemical propellant that performed better in extreme cold, and the ammunition itself was a hybrid of conventional rounds and frozen projectiles that would fragment inside enemy armor. "Movement at checkpoint Beta," reported Corporal Jenkins from his overwatch position. "Looks like they're sending scout units ahead of the main force." Sarah shifted her scope to observe the Vorthack scouts. They moved with the confidence of a species that had never encountered serious resistance, their sensors sweeping the terrain in predictable patterns. They were looking for conventional defensive positions, bunkers, trenches, artillery emplacements. They weren't looking for the nearly invisible firing ports that had been carved into the ice, or the camouflage soldiers who had been lying motionless in the snow for hours. "All sniper teams, you have targets of opportunity," Sarah transmitted. Wait for my signal, then take the shots in sequence. Remember, we want panic, not just casualties. The first Vorthack scout passed within 50 meters of Private Thompson's position. Thompson was buried so deeply in a snow drift that only the lens of his scope was visible, and even that was covered with a specialized coating that prevented reflection. He had been trained in the Canadian Arctic, where hunters learned to remain motionless for days while tracking prey across impossible terrain. Through his scope, Thompson could see the alien's 4 eyes scanning the terrain, its heat sensors painting the landscape in thermal colors. The creature was massive, easily 8 feet tall, and covered in thick armor plating that was designed to deflect conventional weapons. But Thompson wasn't using conventional weapons. "Sniper 1, you have the shot," Sarah's voice whispered through his earpiece. Thompson's finger found the trigger. The rifle made barely any sound, a soft whisper that was immediately swallowed by the wind. The ice bullet struck the Vorthack scout center mass, penetrating the thermal armor and exploding in a superheated steam inside the creature's torso. The alien dropped without a sound, its body systems overloaded by the sudden thermal shock. "Sniper 2, take your shot." Across the battlefield, Corporal Williams repeated the process with mechanical precision. Her target was eliminated before it even realized its companion had fallen. "Sniper 3, Sniper 4, Sniper 5. In the space of 30 seconds, the entire Vorthack Advanced Scout unit had been eliminated without any of them managing to send a warning signal. To the main alien force, their scouts had simply vanished into the wide expanse of the tundra. "This is War Commander Zexthal to advance reconnaissance," came the transmission over the alien command frequency that the humans had been monitoring for weeks. "Report your status." Silence. "Advance reconnaissance. Respond immediately." More silence. Sarah watched through her scope as confusion rippled through the Vorthack ranks. Their formations began to slow, commanders consulting with each other about the mysterious disappearance of their scouts. This was exactly the psychological effect she had been hoping for. "All units, prepare for Phase 2, she transmitted. "Let them come closer." The main Vorthack force resumed its advance, but now with visible caution. They had deployed additional sensor drones and were scanning the terrain more carefully, looking for whatever had eliminated their scouts. Their heat sensors showed nothing but endless white ice. Their motion detectors picked up only the movement of wind-blown snow, and their communication arrays detected no electronic signatures. They were looking for an enemy that fought like they did, with heavy weapons, obvious positions, and detectable technology. They weren't prepared for an enemy that had learned to become part of the landscape itself. Lieutenant Hayes monitored the alien communications from his position in a buried command post. "Ma'am, they're spreading out their formation. Looks like they're trying to minimize the risk of ambush by increasing the distance between units." "Perfect," Sarah replied. "That just makes them easier to isolate and eliminate." "Santos, are your teams ready?" "Affirmative, Commander. We've got overlapping fields of fire covering the entire approach. The moment they enter the killing zone, we can cut off their retreat routes." The killing zone was a 3-mile stretch of terrain that appeared to offer the most direct route to New Geneva. In reality, it was a carefully designed trap that had taken months to prepare. Every ice formation had been shaped to channel enemy movement into predetermined corridors. Every snow drift concealed firing positions, and every apparent piece of cover hid explosive charges that could be detonated remotely. The Vorthack advance units entered the killing zone at 0847 local time. Sarah watched them through her scope, noting how their heavy armor made them slow and clumsy on the ice. Their repulsor systems, designed to work efficiently over various types of terrain, struggled to maintain stable hover patterns over the uneven frozen surface. "First contact in 30 seconds, reported Sergeant Santos. "Enemy units are moving into position Alpha through Gamma." Sarah could see the aliens spreading across the wide expanse below, their dark armor making them stand out like insects on a clean sheet. They moved with military precision, but it was precision adapted for conventional warfare on temperate worlds. They had no idea that every step was taking them deeper into a trap designed by soldiers who understood ice warfare better than any species in the galaxy. "All units, weapons free," Sarah commanded. "Show them what winter looks like." The first explosions came from beneath the ice itself. Santos had positioned charges underneath key sections of the glacier, creating sinkholes that swallowed entire squads of alien infantry. The Vorthack soldiers fell through ice that had seemed solid moments before, plunging into hidden crevasses where they would be trapped until the cold finished them off. Simultaneously, the ice spikes came down. Massive pillars of frozen water, each weighing several tons, crashed into the alien formations with the force of artillery shells. The Vorthack's heat shields were useless against kinetic impact, and their armor crumpled under the weight of falling ice. Contact left. Contact left. The alien communications channels erupted with panicked voices as the disciplined advance dissolved into chaos. But this was only the beginning. As the surviving Vorthack forces tried to regroup, they found themselves under attack from weapons they couldn't see, fired by soldiers they couldn't locate. Ice bullets struck from impossible angles, freezing and shattering armor systems that had been designed to withstand plasma weapons. Explosive charges detonated under their feet, creating gaps in the ice that split their formations apart. "They're trying to retreat," shouted Corporal Rodriguez over the sound of battle. "Enemy units are pulling back toward the main force." "Negative," Sarah replied, shifting her aim to target the alien command units. "Cut off their retreat. We want them panicked and scattered, not organized and angry." This was the genius of the Cold Division strategy. They weren't just fighting a battle, they were hunting. Like wolves separating prey from the herd, they were using the terrain and weather to isolate enemy units and eliminate them piecemeal. The Vorthack had expected a conventional siege where they could use their superior numbers and firepower to overwhelm fixed defensive positions. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that struck from everywhere and nowhere, using weapons and tactics they had never encountered. "Ma'am, enemy reinforcements are moving up from the rear," reported Lieutenant Hayes. "Looks like they're sending in their heavy assault units." Sarah smiled as she watched massive Vorthack war machines lumber across the ice toward the battle zone. The aliens were reacting exactly as predicted, sending their most powerful units to crush what they assumed was the main human defensive position. They had no idea that the real trap was just beginning. The Wolves circle, the Vorthack heavy assault units moved across the tundra like mobile fortresses, their massive frames housing enough firepower to level a city block. Each war machine stood 20 feet tall and was equipped with enough armor to shrug off direct hits from conventional artillery. Their heat-based weapons could melt through reinforced steel in seconds, and their shields could deflect most known projectile weapons. But they had never faced the Cold Division's thermal shock artillery. Captain Elena Vasquez crouched in her hidden position beneath the ice, surrounded by equipment that would have seemed impossible just months ago. The thermal shock cannon had been her brainchild, developed from studying how extreme temperature changes affected different materials. Instead of trying to penetrate Vorthack armor with force, she had designed a weapon that used the aliens' own heat-based technology against them. "Range to target 800 meters and closing," whispered her spotter, Sergeant Kim. "Wind speed negligible, thermal differential optimal." Vasquez made final adjustments to her weapon's targeting system. The thermal shock cannon looked like a conventional artillery piece, but instead of firing explosive shells, it launched projectiles filled with liquid nitrogen that had been supercooled to nearly absolute zero. When these projectiles struck a target surrounded by heat shields, the temperature differential created stress fractures that could tear apart even the strongest materials. "All thermal shock units, this is Frost Leader," Vasquez transmitted on the Cold Division's secure frequency. "Target the lead units. We want to stop their advance and create obstacles for the units behind them." 3 miles away, Commander Sarah Chun watched the alien heavy assault units through her scope, noting how their heat signatures blazed like beacons in the frigid air. The Vorthack seemed to believe that more heat meant better protection, not understanding that in Arctic warfare, heat made you visible, predictable, and vulnerable. "Frost Leader, you are cleared to engage," Sarah transmitted. "All other units, prepare for follow-up strikes. Remember, we want confusion and panic, not just destruction." The first thermal shock round struck simultaneously across a 2-mile front. Vasquez watched through her scope as the lead Vorthack war machine simply disintegrated, its armor plating cracking and shattering like glass as the extreme temperature differential tore apart the molecular structure of the metal. The machine's fusion reactor, suddenly exposed to the frigid air, underwent rapid cooling that created a cascade failure throughout its systems. Direct hit. Target eliminated, reported Sergeant Kim, already beginning to relocate their position as per Cold Division protocol. Secondary explosions are spreading to adjacent units. The destruction of the lead war machine created a chain reaction that the Vorthack had never anticipated. Molten debris from the fusion reactor struck the ice beneath adjacent units, creating sudden steam explosions that cracked the frozen surface. Two more war machines plunged through weakened ice into hidden crevasses, their massive weight carrying them down into depths where their heat shields were useless against the crushing cold and pressure. This is War Commander Zexthal to all units. The alien commander's voice crackled with fury over the intercepted communications. Deploy countermeasures immediately. Adjust thermal shielding to compensate for enemy weapons. But the Vorthack countermeasures were designed for conventional warfare. They increased power to their heat shields, making them even more visible to thermal scopes. They spread their formations wider, making them easier targets for individual snipers. They deployed sensor drones to scan for hidden enemies, but the drones were programmed to look for heat signatures and electronic emissions, not for soldiers who had learned to become invisible in ice and snow. Sergeant First Class Maria Santos watched from her tunnel as alien forces attempted to establish a defensive perimeter just 400 meters from her position. Through her scope, she could see Vorthack infantry deploying portable shield generators and setting up firing positions behind what they thought were secure barriers. They had no idea that they were standing directly over one of the Cold Division's most elaborate traps. Rodriguez, are the ice charges ready? Santos whispered to her second-in-command. Charges are primed and standing by, Corporal Rodriguez replied. We got synchronized detonations set for the entire grid. Once we blow the charges, that whole section of ice becomes a kill zone. The ice charges were Santos's specialty, developed from her experience with controlled demolitions in mountain warfare. Instead of using conventional explosives that would be detected by alien sensors, she had created a network of charges that used chemical reactions optimized for extreme cold. When detonated, they would create precise fractures in the ice that would appear random, but were actually designed to channel enemy forces into predetermined areas. All tunnel teams, this is Wolf Leader, Santos transmitted. Enemy forces are in position. Initiate ice break on my mark. She watched as more Vorthack units moved into the trap zone, their heavy footsteps causing minor vibrations that her sensors had been tracking for the past hour. The aliens believed they were taking a defensive position that would allow them to regroup and plan their next assault. In reality, they were standing on ice that was about to become their grave. Execute ice break. Execute, execute, execute. The explosions were almost silent, designed to avoid detection by alien audio sensors. But their effect was devastating. Across a half-mile area, the ice beneath the Vorthack forces suddenly developed a network of cracks that spread faster than the aliens could react. What had seemed like solid ground became a maze of unstable ice flows, each one shifting and tilting as the carefully planned demolitions created a controlled collapse. Contact! Contact! The ground is failing. Alien voices filled the communication channels as entire squads found themselves sliding into ice-cold water or trapped on ice fragments that were too small to support their weight. But this was only the beginning of Santos's trap. As the Vorthack forces struggled with the unstable terrain, her tunnel teams emerged from hidden positions like wolves emerging from their dens. Each team consisted of soldiers who had trained for years in underground warfare, moving through tunnel networks with the speed and precision of people who could navigate in absolute darkness. Teams 1 and 2, take the left flank, Santos commanded as she led her own team through a tunnel that emerged directly behind the alien position. Teams 3 and 4, seal their retreat routes. Remember, ice bullets only. We don't want ricochets in the tunnels. The Vorthack forces found themselves under attack from an enemy they couldn't see or predict. Human soldiers emerged from the ice itself, fired precise shots with weapons that created no muzzle flash or heat signature, and then vanished back into tunnels that the aliens couldn't detect. It was like fighting ghosts who could walk through solid ice. "They're coming from underground," one alien commander transmitted. "All units, watch for tunnel entrances." But the tunnel entrances were camouflaged so perfectly that they were invisible even at close range. The Cold Division had spent months studying how ice and snow could be shaped to create optical illusions, making openings that blended seamlessly with the surrounding terrain. Even when Vorthack soldiers were looking directly at a tunnel entrance, their eyes couldn't distinguish it from natural ice formations. "This is impossible." War Commander Zexthal's voice echoed with frustration and growing fear. "How are they moving through solid ice? Our sensors show no tunnels." The answer was simple. The tunnels were too small and too well insulated for alien sensors to detect. While the Vorthack designed their technology for species that required large, obvious infrastructure, humans had learned to work within constraints that seemed impossible. The tunnel network was barely wide enough for a human soldier, carved with precision tools that left surfaces so smooth they reflected sensor waves without creating detectable echoes. Lieutenant Hayes monitored alien communications from his command post, tracking the psychological impact of the Cold Division's tactics. "Ma'am, their unit cohesion is starting to break down. Multiple commanders are reporting that their forces are refusing orders to advance." Sarah Chun smiled as she acquired a new target through her scope. "That's exactly what we want to hear. Fear is more powerful than any weapon when you're fighting in unfamiliar territory." She had studied the psychological profiles of dozens of alien species, learning how different cultures reacted to environmental stressors. The Vorthack were conquerors who relied on intimidation and overwhelming force. They had never faced an enemy that used the environment itself as a weapon, and their cultural conditioning made them particularly vulnerable to attacks that seemed to come from the landscape itself. "All units, prepare for Phase 3, Sarah transmitted. "It's time to show them that the hunt is just getting started." Phase 3 was the most ambitious part of the Cold Division strategy. Instead of defending fixed positions or conducting limited ambushes, they would begin active pursuit of the alien forces. Using their tunnel networks, intimate knowledge of the terrain, and specialized equipment designed for Arctic warfare, they would hunt the Vorthack across the entire battlefield like a pack of wolves pursuing scattered prey. "Santos, take your teams and begin harassment operations on their eastern flank," Sarah ordered. "Vasquez, relocate your thermal shock units and prepare to hit their artillery positions. Hayes, coordinate with orbital reconnaissance and identify their command structure." The genius of this phase was that it would force the Vorthack to fight on human terms, in an environment where every advantage belonged to the defenders. The aliens would be forced to spread their forces across difficult terrain, react to attacks they couldn't predict, and deal with an enemy that could appear and disappear at will. "Ma'am," reported Corporal Williams from her sniper position, "I'm seeing movement in the alien rear guard. Looks like they're trying to establish a base camp about 5 miles from our position." Sarah adjusted her scope to observe the alien base camp. The Vorthack were setting up a fortified position with all the equipment they would need to sustain a prolonged siege. Fusion reactors for power, atmospheric processors for environmental control, and communication arrays for coordinating with their orbital fleet. It was exactly the kind of fixed position that the Cold Division specialized in destroying. "Williams, mark that position for artillery strike," Sarah ordered. "It's time to teach them that nowhere on this ice ball is safe." Hashtag the pack attacks. The Vorthack base camp sprawled across the ice like a metallic cancer, its fusion reactors casting an orange glow that could be seen for miles in the perpetual twilight of the polar region. War Commander Zexthal stood in the command center, surrounded by holographic displays that showed the devastating losses his forces had suffered in just 12 hours of combat. "Status report," he demanded, his 4 eyes scanning the tactical readouts that painted an increasingly grim picture. "Sir, we have lost 60% of our advance units," reported his intelligence officer, a smaller Vorthack whose carapace bore the scars of previous campaigns. "The heavy assault companies have been reduced to 30% operational capacity. We are detecting no conventional defensive positions, no infrastructure, no supply lines. The humans appear to be operating from the ice itself." Zexthal's mandibles clicked in frustration. In 17 previous conquests, his forces had never encountered anything like this. The humans seemed to possess the ability to move through solid ice, strike with weapons that defied conventional physics, and disappear without leaving any detectable trace. It was as if they were fighting the very landscape rather than a conventional military force. "What about our orbital bombardment capabilities?" he asked. "Limited effectiveness, sir. The atmospheric interference from the ice storms disrupts our targeting systems, and our energy weapons are being diffused by the water vapor in the air. Additionally, the humans appear to have no fixed installations to target." This was the nightmare scenario that no Vorthack commander had ever trained for. Fighting an enemy that had no infrastructure to destroy, no supply lines to cut, and no fixed positions to bombard. The humans had become one with their environment in a way that the aliens couldn't comprehend. 8 miles away from the alien base camp, Commander Sarah Chun crouched in an ice cave that had been carved specifically for this operation. Around her, the key leaders of the Cold Division were assembled for what would be their most daring assault yet. The cave was just large enough for 20 people, its walls lined with thermal dampeners that made it invisible to alien sensors. "Orbital reconnaissance shows they've centralized their command structure," reported Lieutenant Hayes, projecting holographic images onto the ice wall. "Fusion reactors, communication arrays, command bunkers, ammunition depots, everything we need to destroy to cripple their entire operation." Sarah studied the layout of the alien base, noting the security perimeters and patrol routes that had been established according to conventional military doctrine. The Vorthack had created exactly the kind of fixed position that Arctic warfare specialists spent years learning to infiltrate and destroy. "Vasquez, can your thermal shock artillery reach their fusion reactors from concealed positions?" Captain Elena Vasquez consulted her targeting calculations. "Affirmative, Commander. We can position the cannons in ice caves approximately 3 miles from their perimeter. The thermal shock rounds should be able to penetrate their reactor shielding by exploiting the temperature differential." "Santos, what about infiltration routes?" Sergeant First Class Maria Santos pointed to several locations on the holographic display. "We've been mapping their patrol patterns for the past 6 hours. Their sensors are designed to detect heat signatures and electronic emissions, so they're blind to properly equipped infiltrators. I can get a team inside their perimeter and plant charges on critical systems." Sarah nodded, formulating the assault plan that would either cripple the Vorthack invasion force or expose the Cold Division to devastating retaliation. "Here's how we're going to do this. Vasquez will establish firing positions and wait for my signal. Santos will lead an infiltration team to plant charges on their communication arrays and ammunition depots. Meanwhile, I'll take a sniper team to eliminate their command structure during the confusion." The plan was ambitious and dangerous, requiring perfect coordination between multiple teams operating in extreme cold while avoiding detection by alien sensors. But it was also the kind of operation that the Cold Division had been trained for, a surgical strike that would use stealth, surprise, and environmental advantages to achieve objectives that would be impossible through conventional assault. "Remember," Sarah continued, "we're not just trying to damage their base. We want to create panic, confusion, and loss of command authority. Make them feel like they're under attack by ghosts who can strike anywhere at any time." 2 hours before dawn, Santos led her infiltration team through a network of ice tunnels that brought them within 500 meters of the alien perimeter. The team consisted of 8 soldiers, each equipped with specialized gear for Arctic stealth operations, suits that regulated body temperature while blocking thermal signatures, boots that provided traction on ice while muffling sound, and weapons that could fire silently in extreme cold. "Movement ahead," whispered Corporal Rodriguez, who was serving as the team's scout. 2 guards, walking patrol pattern Delta 7. Santos observed the alien guards through her night vision scope. The Vorthack soldiers were massive, their power armor glowing with heat dispersal systems that made them easy to track, but difficult to approach undetected. They moved with the mechanical precision of beings who had never encountered stealth tactics adapted for ice warfare. "Take them," Santos ordered. The attack was over in seconds. Ice bullets, fired from silenced weapons, struck the guards in precise locations that would cause immediate incapacitation without creating noise or visible damage. The aliens collapsed into snow drifts where their bodies would be hidden until the next patrol sweep. "Guards neutralized," Santos reported, moving to primary objectives. The infiltration team split into 2 groups, each targeting different sections of the alien base. Santos led one group toward the communication arrays, massive structures that maintained contact with the Vorthack fleet in orbit. The other group, led by Corporal Rodriguez, moved toward the ammunition depots where the aliens store the exotic materials used in their energy weapons. Santos's group moved through the base like shadows, using drainage culverts and maintenance areas that the aliens had never properly secured. The Vorthack had designed their base according to principles that worked on temperate worlds, but they had failed to account for how ice and snow could be used for concealment and access. Charges placed on primary communication array, Santos whispered into her communicator. Secondary array in 90 seconds. Meanwhile, Rodriguez's team had reached the ammunition depot, a heavily fortified structure that contained enough exotic matter to power the alien weapons for months of sustained combat. The depot was guarded by automated defenses that scanned for conventional threats, but they were programmed to ignore the kinds of environmental signatures that properly equipped Arctic infiltrators could generate. Charges placed and armed, Rodriguez reported, ready for synchronized detonation. 3 miles away, Captain Vasquez had positioned her thermal shock artillery in ice caves that provided perfect concealment while offering clear lines of sight to the alien fusion reactors. The reactors were the heart of the base's power grid, providing energy for everything from life support to defensive systems. Artillery in position, Vasquez reported. Thermal differential is optimal for maximum damage. Commander Sarah Chun lay prone on a glacier that overlooked the alien command bunker, her sniper rifle trained on the structure where War Commander Zexthal was coordinating the Vorthack war effort. Through her scope, she could see alien officers moving around tactical displays, completely unaware that they were being observed by an enemy who could kill them at any range. All teams, this is actual, Sarah transmitted. Execute assault in 3, 2, 1, execute. The attack began with a thermal shock artillery strike. Vasquez's cannons fired simultaneously, sending supercooled projectiles screaming toward the alien fusion reactors. When the rounds struck the reactor shielding, the extreme temperature differential created instantaneous stress fractures that propagated through the entire structure. Within seconds, 3 fusion reactors underwent cascade failures that sent electromagnetic pulses racing through the base's power grid. The explosions from Santos's charges followed milliseconds later. The communication arrays erupted in showers of sparks, and debris as precisely placed explosives severed the connections that kept the alien forces in contact with their orbital fleet. Simultaneously, the ammunition depot detonated in a chain reaction that sent exotic matter cascading across the base in destructive waves of energy. Base power is down, reported Lieutenant Hayes from his monitoring position. Their communication systems are offline, and their defensive perimeter is collapsing. In the chaos and darkness that followed the initial explosions, Sarah began systematically eliminating the alien command structure. Through her scope, she could see Vorthack officers try to restore order, their heat signatures making them perfect targets for her ice ammunition. Each shot was carefully placed to create maximum disruption, killing senior officers while leaving junior personnel alive to panic and spread confusion. Command bunker is neutralized, Sarah reported. Alien command authority is collapsing, but the assault was far from over. As the base descended into chaos, Santos's team began the most dangerous part of their mission, escaping through hostile territory while alien forces tried desperately to restore some semblance of order. The Vorthack soldiers were firing wildly into the darkness, unable to distinguish between shadows and actual threats. Extraction route compromised, Santos reported as her team found their planned escape route blocked by alien reinforcements. Requesting alternate extraction. Negative on extraction, Sarah replied. Go to ground and wait for Phase 4. Phase 4 was the most audacious part of the Cold Division strategy. Instead of trying to extract the infiltration teams, they would use the confusion created by the base assault to launch a coordinated attack on the scattered alien forces across the entire battlefield. Every Vorthack unit that was trying to respond to the base assault would find itself under attack by soldiers who seemed to materialize from the ice itself. All units, this is actual, Sarah transmitted to the entire division. The hunt is now open. Show no mercy, take no prisoners, and remind these aliens why humans are the apex predators of the galaxy. Across the frozen battlefield, Cold Division's soldiers emerged from positions they had maintained for hours, moving with the fluid precision of pack hunters who had finally been unleashed on their prey. They attacked Vorthack units that were already disoriented by the loss of command authority and communication systems, using tactics that exploited every advantage provided by their Arctic environment. The Vorthack invasion force, which had numbered 40,000 soldiers just 24 hours earlier, was about to learn what happened when apex predators decided to stop defending and start hunting. Hashtag the end of winter. The orbital bombardment began at 0400 hours, 12 hours after the destruction of the Vorthack base camp. Massive energy beams lanced down from the alien fleet, turning sections of the ice sheet into superheated steam. But the beams struck empty ice, targeting heat signatures that had been carefully planted by the Cold Division to mislead orbital sensors. Commander Sarah Chun watched the bombardment from her new command position, a cave system located 15 miles from the original battle zone. Her forces had spent the night relocating through tunnel networks that honeycombed the glacier, always staying ahead of the increasingly desperate alien search patterns. Orbital strike assessment, she requested from Lieutenant Hayes, who was monitoring the bombardment through shielded sensors. They're hitting decoy positions exclusively, ma'am, Hayes reported with satisfaction. Our thermal signature decoys are working perfectly. They think they're targeting our main force, but they're actually just melting empty ice. The thermal signature decoys have been another innovation born from understanding Arctic warfare better than any alien species. By placing small heating elements in carefully chosen locations, the Cold Division could create heat signatures that looked like human positions to orbital sensors while their actual forces remained completely invisible. What's the status of the alien ground forces? Sarah asked. Scattered and demoralized, ma'am. We're intercepting communications that indicate complete breakdown in unit cohesion. Multiple companies are reporting that they're under constant attack by enemies they can't locate or engage. This was exactly what Sarah had hoped to achieve. Over the past 18 hours, the Cold Division had transformed from defenders into hunters, using their mobility and stealth to attack isolated Vorthack units while avoiding direct confrontation with larger forces. Every alien soldier on the ice was now looking over his shoulder, jumping at shadows, firing at ice formations that might conceal human snipers. Sir, came a transmission in broken human language over the alien command frequency. This is Subcommander Kethval of the Vorthack Hegemony. We request immediate parley with human command authority. Sarah smiled at the desperation in the alien's voice. The Vorthack had gone from demanding unconditional surrender to requesting negotiation in less than 24 hours. But the hunt wasn't over yet. Lieutenant Hayes, patch me through to their communication system, Sarah ordered. Let's hear what they have to say. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a Vorthack officer who looked nothing like the confident conquerors who had demanded surrender the day before. This alien's carapace was cracked, his armor showed signs of ice damage, and his four eyes darted nervously as if expecting attack from any direction. Human Commander, the alien began, I am Subcommander Kethval. War Commander Zexthal was killed during your assault on our base. I am now Senior Officer of remaining Vorthack forces on this world. Congratulations on your promotion, Sarah replied dryly. What do you want, Subcommander? We wish to negotiate terms for withdrawal from this system. We acknowledge that this world is defended by forces beyond our capability to defeat. Sarah considered the request while monitoring reports from her field commanders. Across the battlefield, Cold Division units were systematically destroying isolated alien forces, capturing equipment, and driving the survivors into increasingly desperate positions. The Vorthack invasion force had been reduced to less than 15,000 effective soldiers, most of whom were trapped in defensive positions that were becoming untenable as the weather worsened. I'm willing to discuss terms, Sarah replied, but first I want you to understand exactly what you're dealing with. You came here thinking you were conquering a weak species trapped on a frozen rock. Instead, you walked into the territory of the most effective predators the galaxy has ever produced. She gestured toward the frozen landscape, visible through the cave entrance. This isn't a frozen wasteland to us. This is home. Every ice formation, every wind pattern, every temperature variation is a tool we can use against our enemies. You thought cold meant weak, but you were wrong. Cold means patient. Cold means precise. Cold means absolutely lethal when you know how to use it. The alien officer's mandibles clicked nervously. We underestimated human capabilities. Our intelligence was incomplete. Your intelligence was fine, Sarah corrected. Your problem was that you've never faced a species that evolved to thrive in conditions that would kill most sentient beings. You've conquered 17 worlds, but how many of them were ice worlds? How many had defenders who were born in sub-zero temperatures? The truth was becoming clear to the surviving Vorthack forces. They had attempted to invade a world defended by beings who were so perfectly adapted to Arctic warfare that they might as well have been fighting the winter itself. Every tactical advantage the aliens had counted on, superior numbers, advanced technology, orbital support, had been neutralized by defenders who understood their environment better than the Vorthack understood their own weapons. What are your terms for withdrawal? Kethval asked, his voice carrying the defeat of a species that had never experienced true military failure. Sarah consulted with her senior officers before responding. Complete withdrawal of all Vorthack forces from this system within 24 hours. You will leave behind all military equipment and provide detailed information about your invasion plans for other human colonies. In return, we will allow your surviving forces to depart without further attacks. And if we refuse, Sarah's smile was visible even through the holographic transmission. Then, you'll discover what happens when winter wolves stop playing with their prey and start hunting for real. Right now, we've been conducting harassment operations. If you force us to escalate to full combat operations, none of you will leave this ice ball alive. The threat wasn't empty bravado. The Cold Division had been fighting with restraint, focusing on psychological warfare and targeted strikes rather than total annihilation. If forced to escalate, they could unleash tactics that would turn the entire ice sheet into a killing field from which no alien force could escape. We accept your terms, Kethval replied after a long pause. We will begin immediate withdrawal of all forces. Excellent, Sarah said. But, Sub-Commander, before you go, I want you to send a message to your High Command. Tell them the humans don't just survive on ice worlds. We rule them. Any future invasion force that comes to an ice world defended by humans should expect the same reception you received. The transmission ended, leaving the Cold Division command post in satisfied silence. Through their sensors, they could already detect the beginning of the Vorthack withdrawal as alien forces started moving toward their landing zones for evacuation. Ma'am, reported Sergeant Santos over the communication system. Field teams are confirming alien withdrawal across all sectors. They're abandoning equipment and moving in full retreat. Sarah nodded, then activated the division-wide communication system to address all her soldiers. All units, this is actual. Mission accomplished. The Vorthack invasion force is withdrawing from Kepler 442c. You have successfully defended New Geneva and demonstrated to the galaxy that human ice worlds are not easy targets. Across the frozen battlefield, soldiers of the Cold Division began emerging from positions they had maintained for over 24 hours. They moved with the quiet satisfaction of predators who had successfully defended their territory, collecting abandoned alien equipment and preparing to return to their base. What's our casualty report? Sarah asked Lieutenant Hayes. Remarkably light, ma'am. 7 wounded, none killed. Medical teams report that all wounded personnel are expected to make full recoveries. It was an almost unbelievable result for a battle against a force that had outnumbered them 20-1. But it was also proof of what happened when soldiers who truly understood their environment faced invaders who had no idea what they were walking into. Private Jackson, the young soldier who had asked about the battle plan the day before, approached Sarah as she prepared to leave the command post. Ma'am, permission to ask a question? Go ahead, Jackson. How did you know we could win? I mean, they had so many advantages. Numbers, technology, orbital support. How did you know our tactics would work? Sarah looked out at the ice sheet where the retreating Vorthack forces were struggling to reach their extraction points, their heavy equipment bogging down in snow drifts and ice formations that posed no challenge to properly trained human soldiers. Jackson, I grew up in northern Canada, where the temperature drops to -40 degrees and stays there for months. I learned to hunt in conditions where most people can't even survive. When I joined the military, they sent me to train with Norwegian mountain troops who live in ice caves and track prey across glaciers. She gestured toward the battlefield where scattered pieces of alien equipment were already being buried by blowing snow. The Vorthak are conquerors who rely on intimidation and superior firepower. They've never faced an enemy that uses the environment as a weapon. They came here thinking they were fighting desperate colonists, but they were actually fighting apex predators in their natural habitat. Sarah shouldered her rifle and started walking toward the extraction point where transport vehicles would take the Coal Division back to New Geneva. The galaxy is going to learn something important from what happened here, Jackson. Humans don't just survive in extreme environments. We thrive in them. And any alien species that underestimates us is going to get a very unpleasant education. As the Coal Division began their return journey across the ice sheet, reports were already spreading throughout the galaxy about the impossible victory on Kepler 442c. The story would be told and retold in a dozen languages. How a force of human soldiers had turned an Arctic wasteland into a trap that destroyed an invasion force 40 times their size. The Vorthak High Command would receive detailed reports about weapons that used extreme cold as a delivery system, soldiers who could move through solid ice, and tactics that turned the environment itself into an ally. Other alien species would begin reassessing their invasion plans for human colonies, particularly those located on worlds with extreme climates. But for the soldiers of the Coal Division, walking across the ice toward home, the lesson was simpler and more fundamental. They had proven something that their ancestors had known for millennia. When predators are cornered in their natural habitat, they don't become desperate, they become deadly. The galaxy had learned to fear human determination and technology. Now, it would learn to fear human adaptation as well. Because the species that had learned to make fire in ice caves, hunt in blizzards, and call winter home was not a species that any sensible alien empire would want to fight on their own ground. The Coal Division had won more than a battle. They had won a reputation that would protect human ice worlds for generations to come. And in the vast, frozen expanses of dozens of human colonies, soldiers trained in Arctic warfare would continue their eternal vigilance, ready to remind the galaxy that winter wolves are never easy prey.